Hey, I'm Nikolai from Bunker Samples, and this is Intimate Cello Iremia. If you are familiar with Intimate Viola Iremia, you will be pleased to know that this is exactly the same. The same idea and concept, the same techniques and articulations, the same microphones and the same interface. But it's a cello, so the two go really well together. So what is the Iremia concept? Well, it's the idea that when you play really quiet on a string instrument, it really brings out the tiny imperfections in the sound, the human imperfections that creates a great sense of intimacy. And the softer you play, the more you hear these tiny details. So to capture them, we played really quiet, and we put a lot of microphones very close. In fact, the closest microphone is inside the instrument itself. But of course, we also have some more traditional further away perspectives. So this is a collection of very quiet solo string textures, and as you just heard me fooling around on the keyboard, it is designed specifically to play chords, not just single lines like normal string libraries. So what do you get for your money? Well, this is the main pads, and there are basically three sections to the library. We have a bunch of static sustains up here, then we have a bunch of more moving textures, and then we have a whole bunch of swells as well, and some combination patches. Now, to play soft on a string instrument, obviously you can just play very quiet, but you can also put on a mute, and that's why we recorded every single technique and articulation in this library, both without and with a mute. So anything that says normal is without mute, and anything that says CS, that stands for concertino, meaning with mute. And for the sustains, we also have a super concertino, but we'll get to that. So this is triple P sustains normal. and you get that in a slightly louder version. And the loudest. So you can think of these three dynamics for each sustain as three different emotional intensities. But they're all a single dynamic layer, so how can we play expressively? Well, let's get right into it. With the dynamic slider, if you click here, you get a bunch of options. If we turn them all off, the slider does nothing. But if we turn this up, simulated dynamics, you'll hear what it does. You can hear as I move the slider up, it gets brighter, and as I move the slider down, it gets duller, like a real instrument. But there isn't any dynamic variation as such. To get that, we need to turn up the dynamic range as well. And now we get this. The last control, velocity control, basically determines how loud the starting volume of each note is relative to each other. So you can play soft in the left hand and loud in the right hand, and that will make the right hand stand out more. So I like to have all of them sort of in the middle, about there, but let's get a big dynamic range. If you need more dynamic range, we have the expression slider, and if you right click, you'll see it's pre-mapped to CC11. So with the two together, so as you can hear, even though this pad is just a single dynamic layer, you can get a lot of expression out of it. Let's hear some of the sustains concertino. And again, you get a louder version of that and the loudest version. Then we have the sustain Super CS, Super Concertino, and that is this guy, a giant practice mute. And this is probably one of the softest sounds I have ever sampled. It is whisper quiet. Moving on to the textures, these are very much designed for chordal playing. They are completely improvised and random, so if you hold down a chord long enough, you'll hear different notes sort of poking out of the texture at different times. Here is Bo Pulse's Concertino. And of course you get a normal version of that. Vibrato Pulse's Concertino, probably one of my favorites in the whole library. You can hear what I mean about notes sort of come and go with these textures. Random Rebo Concertino, exactly what you expect. You get that normal as well. Then we have Tremolo Burst Concertino. So I think you can hear what's going on there. Tremolo fluctuations is a constant tremolo, but it goes in and out of speed, random and improvised. Finally, we have two more static sustains. These are harmonics and they are way up high. Let's talk about mic positions. As mentioned, the closest mic is literally inside the instrument itself. It gives a very full-bodied warm sound to the mix, and if we solo it with this button here and pick this articulation, it sounds like this. Super close is right on where the bow meets the string, two Aston mics pointed right at the contact point. And close is a bit more traditional close perspective, a Neumann U87 and two 184s, a bit further away. Mid is two AKG 414s in the middle of the room. And far is two Telefunken M60s right at the back. These are really powerful ways of shaping the sound exactly the way you like it. Let me just show you. But there is another very powerful way of changing the sound. When you record something with multiple microphones at different distances, obviously the sound is going to reach the mic furthest away later. So that can cause phase cancellation. What we've done here with this button is that we have measured that distance, and when it's on, like it is now, all the microphones, far, mid, close and super close, are phase aligned, so they start at exactly the same time as the inside mic. So with it on, but if we turn it off, we restore that natural timing difference between the mics. So it's a much brighter and thinner sound, and with it on you get a warmer, fuller sound. So it's a quick way of instantly changing the sound without using any EQ. You have a few options to change the sound even more per mic channel. If you click on these three lines, you get these controls, one for each microphone. So if we solo the mid mic, you can change the stereo width. And pan it, and you can command control click to reset to default. Down here you can send the mic. Down here you can send the signal from each individual mic to its own discrete outputting contact, so you can process them individually in your DAW. And then we have delay and reverb set. But you'll hear if I turn it up now, nothing happens. That's because we have to turn the delay and reverb on here. You can select your impulse response here. Let's go with a plate and tape. You have a few options here, different for each mode. Yeah, actually I like diffusion. Now we get so if we now unsolo that mic, so being able to send a signal to delay and reverb from individual mics is a very powerful way of adding a background sheen while perhaps keeping some of the sound close and dry. Before we move on to the next pads, I do want to mention something about these sustains, and that is that they sound a little bit different than the textures. I'll show you what I mean. If we play sustains normal, and for example rebo normal, you'll hear there is a difference. That's because we recorded everything over 2 days in the studio, and to make a very long story very short, a lot of things happened, but 4 months later I finally had these samples edited and programmed in Kontakt, and I just didn't like the way the sustains worked as a virtual instrument. They had too much and too slow vibrato, and if you play chords like I would like to be able to with this instrument, it just didn't sound good. So 4 months after the first session, we got Jung, the cellist, back in the studio, and we recorded all the sustains again. Unfortunately, she in the meantime had acquired a new instrument and we couldn't get hold of the old one. But trust me, these new sustains are so much better, and I actually think that if you're, for example, going to layer these sustains with the texture, it is a strength that they are recorded on 2 different instruments and sound slightly different. Just want to be open about it. As you heard in the beginning, we also have some swells, and these comes in normal, concertino and tremolo concertino, and 4 different lengths, which you can select here. And you can also use the key switches down here. Forgot to mention that on the previous pads, but pretty self-explanatory. So 3 seconds concertino. Let's hit 2 seconds normal. This is what the tremolo sounds like. We also have a Time Machine Pro version of the Swells pads. The downside is it uses a lot more of your process memory. The upside is you now get a time stretch slider. Keep in mind, this is not 10%, is just a way of stretching the sample to make it a little bit faster or slower if 1 through 4 seconds doesn't fit what you need. So here's 2 seconds without anything. We can make it quicker. Or slower. I should also mention, as you can hear with the swells, that they are done in 1 bow stroke, so they are butter smooth. That just jives with the concept of Iremia. Then we have the CS into normal pads, and what this pads does is impossible to do in real life because it crossfades from the muted version of a sound into the unmuted. To hear the fade, you're going to have to use the dynamic slider. This is one of my favorites, super concertino into normal concertino. Random rebow. As you probably heard, when you're right in between two layers where you hear both sound at the same volume, you can get some phasing. Just want to be honest about it, there's not a whole lot I can do, but I still think it's a very useful pads. Dynamic sustains is sort of a bonus pads where you can crossfade between the dynamic layers of the three different sustains, the non-muted, muted, and super muted. So here is sustains normal from triple P into P. And muted. And that's intimate cello Iremia. It goes without saying, it goes really, really well together with the viola in the same series, and the two together is sort of like a cheat code of getting that fragile, super intimate and very human Scandi Noir string sound. And I think it's one of the most beautiful things Bongo Samples has made yet, and I hope you get to enjoy the library. See you in the next one. Bye bye.